Season's greetings, Internet, and welcome to the first video of this year's Oxmas season. For today's video, I would like to share with you all my thoughts on the 1977 Jim Henson classic holiday special, Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas. This special is based off of a 1971 children's book by the same name, which was written by Russell Hoban and illustrated by Lillian Hoban. I'm not sure if I'm saying the last name correctly, but we're going to go with that. Now, I should start off by saying that in place of reviewing a modern copy of this particular special that can be found on DVD or found on streaming someplace, I decided that we were going to take a look back at an old television airing. Now, you all may be asking yourselves,
why?
Which is an excellent question.
I'm telling you why.
Yeah?
'Cause
This is the version I grew up with. That's why. You see, when I was little, my siblings and I used to love watching Nickelodeon. Well, one holiday season, I think it was either 1994 or 1995, my mother made a recording of this special off of that particular station. We had the whole thing. We had from the introduction with Kermit the Frog riding in on his bicycle all the way through the end credits, as well as every commercial break from start to finish. Sadly, that tape has become lost to time. So let's fast forward several years to find myself doing my then usual rounds of thrifting and hunting for fun stuff at our local Goodwill, where I happened to stumble upon an old friend on the DVD section. I hadn't seen this special in such a long time, in so many years. So needless to say, when I saw this, I was really excited and happy to find this. So I grabbed it, along with a couple of other cool things that I had found, and I headed for the checkout. I held off on watching this until the holiday season that year, but once I did finally pop this sucker into the DVD player, I became pretty confused. As the events played out on screen, there were a few things that here and there that just were not quite right. They were different from what I recalled. Certain scenes were shorter, there were missing bits of dialogue, and there were gags that were missing. By the time this DVD ended, I was scratching my head. Was I remembering it wrong? Were all of those missing bits and details just part of some childhood fever dream? Well, upon looking through the bonus features on this right here, on the disc, and doing a bit of research online, I had my answer for why it just didn't seem right. As it turns out, when it comes to television, at least how it used to be, I'm not sure if it's still the same way, different channels would have different time slots for the same movie. If the movie's runtime wasn't quite long enough to fill that space, then the station would be given a slightly different edit of the film with bonus/deleted scenes thrown in to make sure the motion picture would fill that time slot appropriately. There's an interesting history behind that, and, well, we're not here to discuss that right now. If you want to look into some of that, I'll pop a link right up here. So getting back to the DVD here, getting back on track. The reason why the DVD version didn't line up with what I remembered was because the version that we had for all those years was a slightly extended TV cut of the thing. After learning that I wasn't going crazy, I learned to live with what I had and moved on. Fast forward to earlier this year, this past summer I believe, to where I bought a big, and I mean a big box of videotapes from a kind woman off of Facebook Marketplace. The same box of tapes seen at the start of my The Horror of Moldy Tapes video from back in Oktoberfest season. While going through and cleaning up those tapes and recording them onto my laptop, I came across this tape right here. At first, I didn't really think much of this black plastic rectangle because the first thing I saw when I focused on this was the bit of Sharpie right down here where it's been labeled as Disney Classic. So I took it up to my office after I was done cleaning it and whatever, popped it into the VCR, hooked everything up, and started recording this tape and went back to work on the next tape. Imagine my surprise when I come back later after another tape or two and I look on the screen to see a certain fuzzy buddy, Emmet, on the screen. I kid you not, I got hit with such a powerful wave of nostalgia that I almost dropped the other tape I was holding and my eyes started to water a little bit. But I forced myself to look away from the screen, and I got back to work cleaning more of those tapes. So several days later, while I was going through the recordings on the laptop, I came across this particular recording again, and after the Donald Duck cartoon ended, because, well, that's what the Disney Classic special on here was. What was it? Ludwig von Drake. Ludwig von Drake was essentially following Donald Duck around with Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and kind of just recording and making a book out of how Donald Duck raised his nephews. But regardless, after that special ended off of this tape, I started skimming through and got to the Emmet Otter special, and, well, I was skimming through that, looking for, like, old seasonal commercials, old, just interesting stuff that you won't find on, like, any of the commercial releases of these tapes. These films, these specials. I didn't happen to find any, but I did find what I was looking for. I don't know if it's exactly the same one that I saw when I was a kid that we had on that videotape that we recorded all those years ago, but it's got a lot of the scenes I remember that the DVD did not. Oh, and another little special thing. It turns out that for this particular copy, for whatever reason, they decided to cut out all the special intermittent pieces that had Kermit the Frog in it. The entire scene at the beginning where he's riding in and the river bottom gang come along and they, like, knock him off his bike and whatever and all that. Completely gone. Every single last bit of Kermit just put onto the editing room floor by Disney, I think it was. Anyway, this had a bunch of the scenes that the DVD does not. Like, actually in the film, you don't have to go into the bonus features to watch them, is what I mean. And I was just hit with such another massive pang of nostalgia when I saw those scenes playing out on the on the laptop screen. So that, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, and everyone in between, is the reason why we're going to be taking a look at this home media recording from 1986, November of 1986, as opposed to taking a look at this high-quality collector's edition Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas DVD. So with that out of the way, let's finally get on to discussing the special itself, shall we? The special starts off with Kermit the Frog riding in on his bike before he crashes into a street sign showing the names of Frogtown Hollow and River Bottom. He starts to introduce us to the special, but is quickly interrupted and assaulted by some characters driving along in a car, and has his scarf stolen by a fish in said car. He explains to us that that was the River Bottom Nightmare Gang before name-dropping the special, and the camera pans out, leading us to some nice overhead shots of Frogtown Hollow, which is where the story takes place. I just have to pause here for a second and say that this set piece that Jim Henson's production, that his crew put together for this nice little shot here, is fantastic. Soon after that flyby sequence, we get some ground shots with Kermit's narration leading us to meet Emmet Otter and his mother as they're rowing their way down the river and singing a fun little song about a deceased obese grandmother otter's swimsuit. And if you think I'm kidding, listen to some of these lyrics.
She was known for her generous silhouette, and yet she was known even more for the bathing suit she wore.
We've made curtains
And handkerchiefs
and clothing for the poor.
from the one bathing suit that your Grandma Otter wore.
Anyway, as they're going along, we find out that the reason they're out on the water that day is because they're dropping off laundry that they've done for people along the riverbank to try and make some money. They drop off their payload and get snubbed on their pay due to an issue from the last time they'd washed that character's linens. They brush this off and continue along their way singing and rowing. By the way, did I happen to mention that this is just a little bit of a musical? Another thing they do a lot in this special is make references to the deceased snake oil salesman who was Emmet's father. We find out that the Otter family is dealing with some rough times financially speaking, as well as a lot of other people who live along the riverbank, which is why these two are out doing odd jobs like this to try and make ends meet. The duo heads into town to do some errands, where they bump into the River Bottom Nightmare Gang from the start of this feature. The gang happen to be in town for lunch when the Snake has them stop at a music store because he needs a new string for his guitar. While they're in town, Emmet points out a guitar in the window of a music store, the same one, as it turns out, that the River Bottom Nightmare Gang went into earlier. He points it out to Mrs. Otter and says that that's what she could get him for Christmas. Then we get to see some of the gang's antics as they begin playing some loud rock and roll music and generally being rowdy. They then leave and accidentally send a big drum rolling out of the storefront, which almost runs into Ma Otter. The iguana returns the drum, and the gang leaves, and we cut to Emmet and his ma, who we've found out at this point is named Alice, rowing down the river again, heading for home. They talk about how close it is to Christmas, which, according to what Ma Otter said earlier, is only 3 days away. Then the conversation moves on to the topic of the last Christmas before Pa Otter passed away. Then we get treated to another song number. This one is thankfully not about an oversized otter swimwear, but instead, this is kind of an uplifting tune about not having a hole in the wash tub.
Head full of good thoughts, belly full of grub, money in your pocket when there ain't no hole in the wash tub.
Sweet as honeysuckle on the vine, Ma.
After a quick fade out to black, we get some more voiceover from Kermit. Then Emmet goes out to fetch some firewood and runs into his friend Wendell, who has a job offer for him. Along with that, Emmet finds out that there's a talent contest going on in town. At the same time that this is going on, Ma Otter also finds out about the contest. Then Emmet and Wendell bump into some of their other friends, Harvey and Charlie, who have an idea about how to win the contest. They want to get a Jug-Band together. The only problem is that in order to be a part of the band, Emmet would have to play washtub bass, which is only a problem because of the fact that he would have to put a hole in his mother's washtub in order to make the bass, and he's not really interested in doing that. At the same time that they're conversing about that, Ma Otter is having a chat with her friend about getting involved with that same contest as well. Her complaint being that she doesn't have anything to wear and that she can't afford to buy the material to make anything for herself. Then she gets the idea to pawn off Pa Otter's old tool chest, which she has reservations about doing because Emmet uses that for his odd jobs. Anyway, time passes and Emmet returns home from that job that he and Wendell had been working on, bringing with him their traditional Christmas branch, and he and Ma Otter have another little chat about Pa Otter, before the pair decides that the weather is just about right to go out and use that old slide that Pa Otter had carved into the riverbank and have themselves some fun. As they're slipping and sliding down that slide and across the frozen river, they both decide, independently of the other, to take the risk and pawn that tool chest and put a hole in that wash tub and do what they've got to do to enter that talent contest. At this point we get yet another song number. One which, especially in recent times, doesn't just strum on my heartstrings, it friggin' chews on them. As I'm sure it does with anyone who has lost a loved one or loved ones usually feels around this time of year. Excuse me.
When the mountain touches the valley, all the clouds are taught to fly. Thus our souls shall leave this land most peacefully. When the river meets the almighty sea.
Next we cut to the following morning, where we see Emmet quietly preparing to leave for the day before setting a note on the table for Ma Otter. The camera then pans over to reveal another similar letter for him from across the table. He then proceeds to head out and punctures the wash tub to make his base so he can join his friends in their Jug-Band. This leads us into another musical number, which leads us into checking back in with Ma Otter as she's making herself a dress for the contest and talking with her friend Miss Muskrat. Then it's back over to Emmet and company as they're about to head out for the contest. They get interrupted when the River Bottom Nightmare Gang rides through on their snowmobiles and heckles them before driving off. Next we see the building the contest will be taking place in, with Kermit's voiceover explaining what we're seeing. We get treated to a brief scene of the contestants just as Ma Otter shows up, and we see that she is extremely nervous about this.
Pardon me, is this the talent contest?
Yes, it is. Your dressing room is right over there.
Oh, thank you. I'm very nice to have helped you. I'm very nice. You, excuse me. You're terribly nervous. Sorry.
As the different acts go on, Emmet and his friends are shocked when they hear another contestant playing their song, Barbecue. They quickly convene out in the alley behind the venue and rehearse another song.
Mama makes you stay there forever if you dare to get under your nails. Barbecue.
Just pausing here again because I feel that even if Emmet and his friends were seen as copying the guy before them, their rendition of Barbecue was way better. And I mean, wow. I mean, did you hear that guy? It'll be there forever if you dare to get under your nails. Well, it just... Anyway. But while that was happening...
We're off to a shaky start.
We get another fade-out that leads into Emmet and the boys being called back inside, and we get to see the end of an acrobatics act from a bunch of squirrels. That's followed up by Alice, aka Ma Otter, as she comes out onto the stage after being announced by the Fox host. When she finishes, Emmet and his pals go up and play the song that they had been practicing out in the alley. After this, we find out that Emmet's band was originally the last act planned, but there was a last-minute entry. The Nightmare, who it turns out is the River Bottom Nightmare Gang who had been causing havoc throughout the rest of the special during their brief appearances. I really like what these dudes have got going on here. It's got kind of a cool 70s shock rock kind of Kiss/Alice Cooper thing going on. Even if the Snake dude is making guitar sounds more than he's actually playing the instrument, it's a great look. After that, we find out that the Nightmare won the contest. Then we get another little cut to see Ma and Emmet Otter, as well as his friends, outside the venue. They chat briefly, with Emmet and his mother confessing the things that they had done, the selling of the tool chest and the piercing of the wash tub, before they start making their way home, walking along the frozen river. As they were going along, Harvey starts playing the kazoo. Alice gets the idea that their two songs could fit together, and gets them to start singing, with her guiding them along, and it turns out that the two songs really do sound pretty good together. We also find out that this had all taken place in front of Doc Bullfrog's business, the Riverside Rest. He and his patrons come out and applaud them once they finish singing, and he thinks that they sound good enough to work as entertainers for him and basically hires them on the spot. Kermit returns and gives us a quick epilogue before we cut to the critters as they're heading home from their first gig at the Riverside Rest. Then the special concludes as the group decides to play one more song in memory of Pa Otter. And this version of the song, well, it hits different.
When the mountain touches the valley, all the clouds are taught to fly. When the river meets the almighty sea.
Then the end credits start rolling, and we're treated to an instrumental version of the song before this ends and fades out to black. Well, that'll do it for me. I know that this isn't quite one of the Jim Henson Company's strongest offerings, but for what it is, I have to say that I really like it. Because it's got a certain unpolished charm that you don't really see anymore. And to me, that makes this special more special, because you can tell that they were really trying their best, even if their techniques weren't quite up to snuff just yet. With that, I just want to welcome you all into this year's Oxmas season. Here's to us all having a cool Yule, y'all. Later.